What's up, everyone? UFC Fight Night Namajunas vs. Ribas just wrapped up. Going to be going through my overall thoughts on this card. I think it was a pretty decent card. You had some fun finishes. You had the rare bite DQ. Decent main event between Rose Namajunas and Amanda Ribas. So let's just dive right into it. Coming into this card, wasn't super excited. I don't think there was a ton of hype from the fans. You're leaving the Apex next week. I think people were kind of looking forward to that Atlantic City card. But I think this fight delivered. I think it was better. The fights were better than it looked on paper, which I think that's a fair way to put it. And we got to start off with the main event here. Rose Namajunas beats Amanda Ribas 49-46 on two scorecards, 48-47 on the other one. I was actually kind of surprised when I heard the 49-46s. The way I scored it, I think Rose definitely took rounds 1 and 2. I think Ribas definitely took round 3. For round 4, I was pretty positive the judges were going to give it to Rose, but I do think Ribas has an argument just based on damage, right? For the first half of that round, I think Ribas was getting the better of Namajunas on the feet. Namajunas ends up racking up a couple minutes of control time, but doesn't do much with it. So I think Ribas has an argument for it, but I wasn't shocked. And then I thought Amanda Ribas won round 5. Either way, I expected Rose to get the W here. I'm not really sure what to make of Rose up at 125. I think it's possible she's just, kind of on the downside of her career. So maybe this would have happened whether she was at 115 or 125. But I just don't see her really competing for a title at this weight class. Not saying she couldn't get to a title shot, but when I'm looking at the two girls who should be fighting in the trilogy, Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso, I don't think she matches up super well against either of those. You have Manon Fiorot, Erin Blanchfield fighting next weekend. I'd favor both of those women going up against Rose. I mean, we already saw the Fiorot fight. I know she messed up her hand, but still, I think you got to favor Fiorot there. And then I did like the call out of Macy Barber, but I also think I would favor Macy Barber in that matchup. I just think she's going to be significantly more physical than Rose, and I kind of thought Rose would be able to capitalize on Ribas's kind of wildness and unpredictability a little bit more. Like, I thought there was an opportunity for her to really hurt Ribas. We've seen Ribas get dropped, rocked in a few different fights, so I thought Rose could have done that. Didn't really come through. I do think it's a little odd that she wants to, go for the belt at 125. I guess respect, like wanting a new challenge. But I mean, she has 2 wins over Zhang Weili, who currently has the belt at 115. It just seems like she'll have the much clearer path to getting the title if she goes back down to 115. But who knows if she wants to go for it. Who am I to, tell her not to? And then for Amanda Ribas, it seems like she wants to bounce back and forth between 115 and 125. I do think she's probably better served at 115. I just think she's going to get outsized by a lot of the women at flyweight. I mean, Rose seemed to be the bigger girl, and she's naturally a 115. Ribas is always going to be in fun fights. I really don't think her stock goes down at all. I mean, losing a competitive decision against one of the best women fighters of all time in Rose Namajunas. Now, pivoting over to the co-main event, not super eventful here, but I just kind of want to make this point. I'm sure other people are feeling the same way. I do not understand the UFC's obsession with putting these unranked heavyweights on main cards of their fight nights and even some of their pay-per-views. I do not understand it. It seems like every Apex card specifically has one of these heavyweight, matchups on it, unranked dudes. And the crazy thing about it is they're not even good stylistic matchups, right? Like, if you want to throw Justin Tafa on the main card of a crappy fight night, put him against a striker where they're going to go out there, stand and bang, and you're probably going to get an early round knockout from either dude. No one wants to see Justin Tafa get grappled in a striker-grappler matchup at heavyweight with 2 dudes out of the top 15. It's terrible. It's not fun to watch. I don't get why the UFC is doing it. I was kind of shocked that you had Parkin Usman as like the first fight of the night. I feel like that's kind of a similar caliber fight to what we saw in the co-main. I don't get it. It should only be striker versus striker. If you're going to try to push these dudes on the main card, I mean, give me like that early flyweight fight we had with the bite. I would take that on the main card over the heavyweights. I just don't get it. You have a guy like Julian Erosa on the prelims. They just seem to really love it, and I will not understand it, and I think a lot of fans feel the same way. So please stop putting those heavyweight cards on the main card. But moving on from that, we had Edmen Shahbazyan with a big win over AJ Dobson. Did not start off great. Dobson rocked him early on. For Edmen Shahbazyan here, he had the nice comeback. It seems crazy because it feels like he's kind of like disappointed as like an MMA prospect, but this dude is still only 26 years old. To put that into perspective, Payton Talbott, who's like this, new top prospect, going to talk about him in a little bit, he's 25. Edmen Shahbazyan has just been in the UFC for so long, and we look at his losses. They've come to Derek Brunson, Jack Hermansson, Nasruddin Imavov, and Anthony Hernandez. Like, those are top-tier guys in the middleweight division. Hermansson, Imavov, Hernandez, these guys are also all trending up from when they beat Edmen Shahbazyan, so I still think he has some room to grow. The gas tank seemed to have been his big issue. Wasn't really a factor here because it ended in the first round. He could just be a guy where genetically he might not have that big gas tank, which could limit him, but he should continue to improve. I think you give him a few more fights outside the top 15, help him build his way back up, but good to see him get the win from someone who really kind of had a big fall off while he was still very young in his MMA career. Before that matchup, we had Payton Talbott taking on Cameron Saaimon. Close fight, according to the odds. Heading into it, I actually thought Saaimon should have the slight edge. I just thought he had fought the better guys, won better matchups in his UFC career. But man, Payton Talbott went out there, absolutely destroyed him, hurt him at least 3 different times. It looked like it could have been stopped, in a few different situations. Payton Talbott's 8-0, 7 finishes. Like I said earlier on, he's only 25 years old. He has a lot of room to grow, and I think it's actually crazy how fast he's improving, because in his first UFC fight, had a slow start, kind of got controlled earlier on in the first round to opponent who I think was much lesser than Cameron Saaimon. Totally different dude here going up against Cameron Saaimon. Really just schooled him. Probably the most impressive performance on the card, if not, second or third. This dude's going to be a problem. He's super fun to fight. He's also just super, super composed for someone so young. Just very chill, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. So definitely someone who we should keep our eyes on moving forward. Now we've got to talk about Youssef Zalal starting off his second UFC stint with a big win over Billy Q. He went 3-3-1 in his first stint with the UFC, but those 3 wins came back to back to back. Then he had 3 straight losses against pretty decent competition and then a draw before he was gone from the UFC. I mean, the dude lost to Ilya Topuria. I think Sean Woodson was one of those losses. Damone Blackshear, I believe, was the draw. Like, these are high-quality fighters. He's still fairly young. He racked up 3 first-round finishes on the regional scene, comes back in, and I mean, Billy Q being your first fight back, that is not an easy matchup. That is not the way you would match up, just some random UFC debutant. Billy Q's tough, has historically been very durable, and Youssef Zalal really put it to him. Hurt him with a knee in the first round, did some work on the ground, was looking for a submission, then ended up finding that submission in the second round over Billy Q. There were some rumblings that Billy Q maybe had an injury heading into this one. There was some weird line movement, but I think he looked, fine in there. Youssef Zalal really just put it to him. So interesting to see how his second stint in the UFC will play out. And then I believe this was the final fight on the main card. You had Fernando Padilla back in the win column. He dropped his opponent very early on, then got him with the standing darce. This dude has a crazy frame for featherweight, 6'1", 76-inch reach. Has suffered some losses throughout his young career, but the dude's fun to watch. I think you give him some decent matchups, not trying to throw this dude into the rankings just yet. I think you give him some decent matchups, let him kind of, showcase some of his nice finishing ability, and I think he's going to be a fun guy to watch moving forward in the featherweight division. Now, pivoting over to some of the more fun prelim fights, Julian Erosa submits Ricardo Ramos with a guillotine choke. This is actually Julian Erosa's 3rd stint in the UFC, which is kind of crazy. Typically, a lot of dudes don't get a second shot. He's now on his 3rd stint, and he is making the most of it. 6-3 on this 3rd run with the UFC, and these wins have been pretty quality. Nate Landwehr, Sean Woodson, Charles Jourdain, Hakeem Dawodu, and Ricardo Ramos within those 6 wins. Those are some quality names in that list. He is a little chinny. We saw him get clipped in this fight. I think he's been knocked out 7 times in his career, but he's always going to be in fun matchups. He's kill or be killed. He came back from getting hurt early on, submitted Ricardo Ramos. Ramos really just hasn't been able to get over the hump against the high-level quality of competition in the UFC. He's racked up some nice wins against, maybe not guys who are borderline top 15, but once he's reached that next level, he has struggled. Back-to-back fights getting submitted by the guillotine choke. We'll see how he looks in his next matchup. And then one of the better prelim fights, maybe the best prelim fight, Jarno Evans taking on Stephen Nguyen. This was an absolute dogfight. Errons gets his first UFC W. I think Steven Wynn's a dude who's just going to be in fun matchups. I'm not super worried about him. He's a dog. We saw him on the Contender Series with a really fun fight there. So I don't know if he's going to be a dude who's climbing the rankings, but he should be in fun matchups and is a dude that I'll be interested in seeing fight again. Same exact thing with Errons. Good to see him get in the win column. And then probably the moment from this fight that's going to last the longest in our memory was Igor Severino biting Andre Lima and getting DQ'd. Honestly, kind of disappointing because it was a really fun fight. That was the first time I've ever seen a bite DQ live. Severino ends up getting cut. I think before the main card even started, it was already announced that Dana White was going to be releasing him. Not shocking. I mean, you just can't do that. It was also crazy too because it's not like he was getting schooled or anything, and it's not like the other dude was super dirty. There were some, fence grabs, but nothing crazy, nothing that would warrant the bite. And then he was trying to pretend like he didn't bite when the dude has a clear thing on his arm. Unfortunate. I did think it was a little bit surprising they cut him. Not that it wasn't warranted, but I mean, we've seen some dirty moves from UFC fighters. The first one that came to mind was Priscilla Cachoeira when she was locked in a rear naked choke by Julian Robertson, and she started reaching behind her, trying to eye gouge Julian Robertson. Julian still ended up submitting her, but that was something where I was like, oh man, she should get cut for that. It didn't happen, and then later on, she had the weird weight thing with Jasmine Jasdavicius. So I just thought it was a little bit surprising that they released him, especially during the event. He's still young, 20 years old. It was his first loss. It's a pretty crappy way to ruin your undefeated record. I would not be shocked if he's back, but he's probably going to have to put in some work on the regional scene or with another top promotion if he wants to get another shot here in the UFC. I said it was disappointing because it was a fun fight, but it's also disappointing because these were two top prospects at flyweight. We know flyweight needs fresh blood with all the rematches, the trilogies. I think both of these guys could be dudes who were ranked, in the top 15 in the future. So tough that we're losing one of those guys to, something so stupid here. But those were the main highlights from the card. We had some other decisions, not super notable stuff. Overall, like I said, I think this card probably overachieved expectations. Glad to get out of the Apex. The cards have not been great quality. We're going to Atlantic City. Not a crazy stacked card, but some really fun matchups. And I'm just hyped to get, some energy from the crowd next week. Let me know what you guys thought of the event. We're looking forward to next week in Atlantic City. Let me know down below. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.